Tension is the heartbeat of any story. Without it, there's no investment, no stakes, and ultimately, no reason to care. Getting the reader or the viewer to enjoy your story is important. You want them to stick around to find out what happens next. However, if there is no anticipation for what happens next, then there is no point in continuing the story. There needs to be a moment that captivates the reader, and tension usually is that moment. Now, have you ever noticed how the scariest moments in horror films aren't when the monster attacks, but in the moment before it does? Think about Psycho. The shower scene is legendary, but the tension that builds leading up to it, the shadow, the drawn-out music, the inevitability of the knife, that's what chills you to the core. That sense of vulnerability before the attack. Horror stories and thrillers, at its best, thrive on uncertainty. When the audience knows something bad is about to happen, but doesn't know when or how, their imagination runs wild. Now this is where it gets difficult for writers, because the key is restraint. Don't reveal too much too soon. Create that uncertainty. Keep the audience guessing. Introduce just enough clues to suggest danger, then pull back. Obviously, you need to make sure that the reader or the viewer understands that there is something amiss. There is something wrong, and we don't know how wrong it is until the ultimate reveal, but that's where the imagination fills in the gaps. A threatening phone call, the creak of an unseen door, or even a character's nervous glance. These small moments can build tension far better than an immediate confrontation. And yes, I get it, sometimes you just want to get straight to the point. Sometimes you just want that uncertainty to go away and surprise your reader with something shocking. Yet, the most devastating punches have the longest wind-ups. There are steps to consider, because these steps add to the momentum, and with more momentum, the more impactful the delivery. But that's something that anybody can understand about tension. But we need to make the tension more personal than that. We need the audience to care about what is at risk. So how do we make the tension more personal? Well, we just need to gain the empathy of the reader. There are many ways that writers can do this. They can create a character who is just that likable, a hero that anybody can root for. And by putting this hero at stake, or somebody that this hero cares about at stake, you suddenly got the reader's attention. They care about what happens next, and that makes the anticipation all the more dreadful. Of course, there are some more human aspects. We could appeal to baser human emotions, such as fear of what goes bump in the night, or fear of losing something you worked hard for. These are deeply human fears, something that most people feel on a day-to-day basis. The horror becomes a reflection of something we all dread. It becomes something more personal. So, one thing I like to do when I write certain situations in my stories is I ask myself, why should the audience care? Why should they care about what happens to this character? What happens to this one? Is it because the protagonist might die? That's surface level. But digging deeper, what about losing a loved one, or their sanity, or their home? Even in supernatural stories, the stakes should always have a grounding in real human fears. Suddenly, it's not just about losing the protagonist, but also seeing the sad reactions of the other characters should the protagonist lose their life. That resonates a lot better with an audience. And the final point I'd like to make about tension, and it's something that I believe I underlined well enough with the intro of this video, which is you need to let that dread linger. Modern horror sometimes suffers from the need to get to the good part. Monsters jump out too quickly. The payoff happens before the tension can settle in. But the greatest moments of fear happen when the threat lingers, unresolved. There is a pause, a silence. More specifically, these are moments where the characters don't say anything. Their reactions are enough. In the clips that I showed, you see only characters looking at each other, realizing something. It's as that realization takes effect that the tension reaches its peak. You need that feeling somewhere in those moments of tension, that there is something wrong, always there, always in the background, forcing you to look at the edges of every scene, searching for that ominous figure or for that flinching moment when a character is about to do something wrong. That lingering dread stays with you long after a story is finished. So in writing these moments, try to pace those moments of terror. Let the fear marinate. You could have a moment where a character realizes their lie is about to be revealed. Worse still, they realize that the character they lied to already knows. So you see, tension isn't just about scaring your audience. It's about making them care. It's about building an unbearable sense of anticipation, grounding it in stakes that feel real, feel personal, and then dragging it out just long enough to keep them hooked. Look at it this way. Tension is the heartbeat of your story. You need those moments of silence, so that way the reader can only hear their heartbeat as this scene transpires. And if you're not sure how to practically set it up, you're free to take a look at the scenes that do make you feel dread, because it's personal to you as well. Use that writing as inspiration, as a guide, a blueprint for how you set up your scene, and you're sure to create the exact same sort of tension that you felt when reading it for the first time.